Salesforce product team is giving us another loaded release. In winter 23, we get a lot new flow functionality that we need to talk about. As part of this Jacksonville Salesforce Saturday session, I walked the audience through the whole list. With the exception of the testing functionality that's going GA, we were able to test everything and try everything in our own preview DevOps. And I'm going to have to do a separate video just dedicated to testing because it is very important and new functionality that we need to also talk about. But probably my most important item in this list is going to be the formula builder with the syntax check. Now, this functionality was available in the previous release in the start element, but with this release, wherever we are building a formula inside the flow builder, we get a button to check the syntax of that formula immediately. And we find out about any errors that we may have in our formulas. This is very important, and it is going to make our lives much easier. So without further ado, let's dive into the video and review what brand new functionality is coming in winter 23 for flows. Enjoy. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through all the new release functionality that is in the release notes related to winter 23. So we have quite a bit of new functionality coming. And we are going to also do an Ask Me Anything type of session. So if you have any questions about flow functionality, we could dive into some of the functionality you have questions about. And it is going to be an interactive session. So, you can ask your questions anytime you like. If you want, you can type into the chat window first. And if I'm really not paying attention there, go ahead and speak up. That's okay. Because I cannot really monitor the chat window promptly sometimes when I'm sharing my screen. So let's get started by a brief introduction. Actually, most of you probably know me because you're coming from my channels. I have announced this like on my own social channels, Udemy course, the Slack workspace. But still, let me just show you a brief intro here. And if you know me, you know as well that I don't like slides too much. So, I'm going to show you just one brief screen of what I do and what I actually share all that information. So I'm a 14-time certified application architect, senior consultant at Serious Solutions. And I share quite a bit of information about Salesforce and especially flow automation on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and on my YouTube channel, Salesforce Break. I run a Slack workspace called Salesforce Break, and this is a space for us to ask questions to each other. And whenever we get stuck on flows, we ask questions, and then we also try to help each other out. I do provide most of the answers, but it doesn't really have to be that way. I encourage you to be active on that because I get a lot of questions about, how do I get familiar with more use cases? I think one of the best ways of getting familiar with use cases is trying to help others who are trying to solve real life use cases rather than going at like some imaginary use case. And I have a Udemy course that's called Salesforce Lightning Flows. And if you have not purchased that course already, I have actually created a $9.99 coupon for that one in advance for the Flow Fest 3 this week. And that's going to have a coupon code Flow Fest 3. Let me just paste that in here for you. So you can use this one to purchase the course at $9.99, and you can share it as many times as you want with your friends and family. And it is going to expire in 5 days. These all expire. And I started also running a live flow course that's bootcamp style, 6 weeks long. And this is a flow course where I have sessions Mondays from 12 to 2, 2-hour sessions. And then Fridays, I do an office hour session that lasts about 1 hour. And we go 6 weeks, and we cover pretty much everything that I know about flows. And we do record triggered screen, platform event flows. We touch the orchestrator a little bit. And then we are going to update also that curriculum with the new developments, new advancements of winter 23. So we ran that one time. We have completed cohort 1. That was very well received. And we are about to start cohort 2. So if you're interested in that, you'll see the QR code over here to go to the sign up page. And I'm going to also paste that link over here. So if you have any questions about any of these, do not hesitate to ask me. You can find me on all these social channels. I'm not really particularly chatty on LinkedIn, but other than that, Twitter is great. You can ask your questions on the YouTube channel, on the Udemy course, on the Slack workspace, anywhere you like. And I forgot, actually, this is not specified here. We have now a website where everything is linked. It's called salesforcebreak.com. So if you go to salesforcebreak.com, you can also find the latest coupon codes for the Udemy course and, you know, my blog posts. And let me not forget that I also send out a newsletter every week where I share flow automation tips. So what do we have this release, folks? So to understand what are the recent developments in the new release, we need to go to help.salesforce.com. Can you see my browser screen where I have help.salesforce.com and the release notes up?
And we still see your slide.
Okay, yeah, I need to share it again, I think. Let me share the whole screen. You share. All right. All right, do you see it now?
Yes.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Okay. So first of all, when you go to help.salesforce.com, you can find the Winter 23 release notes. They come in several different formats. One of it is the website itself. And you can also download it as PDF. The PDF file becomes huge. You can't really print it, or you can't even send it to your own Kindle device to read it later. You kind of need to split it into multiple files. It's not emailable. It becomes, I think, about 30, 40 megabytes. Probably the best way to consume it is going to be, again, on the website. And it used to be that Salesforce Flow was kind of buried under Einstein and a couple of other headers. Now, the flow automation got so important and big, it is actually one of the titles. Whenever you open the release notes, you can actually see immediately Salesforce Flow as one of the titles. Oddly, they actually name it Salesforce Flow and they sort it under S. So if you don't see it immediately, it may be because you're looking for the alphabetical sort and you're looking for it under F. It's not under F. So And then when you go over there, you are going to see a couple of titles: Flow Integration, Omni Studio, Flow Builder, and Flow Orchestration. And all these are quite important, but for us, the main functionality is going to be under Flow Builder. That's where we are going to spend most of our time. Flow Builder updates, flow testing and debugging, flow runtime, flow and process management, and flow extensions. And it's also important to note that there are going to be changes to these release notes before the release date. So this is kind of like a living document. You may see some changes, advancements, some things being taken out as you progress through time before the release date. It is an unlikely event, but it could happen. And the fact that these functionalities are listed here under Winter 23 is not really like set in stone. These functionalities may be pulled out in the last minute if Salesforce finds there are some conflicting issues with some other functionalities. That's why it is pushed out to preview orgs and sandboxes first, and everybody is doing their testing and opening tickets if they see any problems with some of these functionalities. Now, the Flow Builder updates are listed here. That's I would say are the most important functionality that we are going to spend most of our time on today. And I'm going to show you some of that functionality works on the Flow Builder. And with some of the stuff that I'm showing, you may not be familiar with the functionality that actually came before. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'll try to back up and then give you some maybe foundational information about what functionality we're reviewing. And then, we can make sure that we are progressing through the list together. Let me just put this away for a second. What do we have in chat? Yes, the link for the release notes. Thanks, Christian. And thanks, Mark. Welcome, Mark. And the link for the site. I appreciate it. So first of all, if you are not familiar with preview orgs, you can go to, if you go to the release documentation for Salesforce in advance of the new release, it makes an announcement and then says, okay, well, here are the events that are coming in preparation for the new release. And they will also say, okay, we made the preview org, the preview dev orgs available for you to try things out. This is called a GS0. These are particularly on one data center, GS0 dev orgs. And the interesting thing about these dev orgs is once you get one, you don't let it expire, it is going to get always the new release functionality in advance with all the other brand new preview orgs. In fact, you may even see the new release functionality before anybody else can look at that announcement and then create a new dev org for that purpose. So I actually highly recommend that you create one or two dev orgs like that, preview dev orgs, and you hold on to them so that when you're trying things out for the new release, you can just go back to these dev orgs and then test out the functionality. So this is one of the dev orgs I'm using for that purpose. So as we go to our setup to go to flows, we are going to be looking for new functionality and we are going to try and observe what changed. Now on this screen, we don't really see any change. We received the Flow Trigger Explorer, and then we have the new flow button. Once we click on the new flow button, we see again the same type of flows that are available in this release. And we are going to go ahead and create a record triggered flow. So I think even this screen got a little bit larger. Salesforce made some usability changes. Some of these screens, the pop-up screens that we had to configure things, they would actually show up a little bit small on the screen. And there was some wasted space. Maybe the start element was not like that, but especially the screen elements, we're going to observe that together. Some of the screen element configurators, they would actually show up on screen quite small. 20-30% of the screen would be wasted, and whatever you're trying to do on your screen would not fit into the screen comfortably. So some of those changed here in this release. So if we go to here, our start element dialog configurator, and then we say we want to configure a trigger whenever a record is created or updated, and then we want to do this in after save mode, actions and related records. It is important to observe that we have now the availability to create complex formulas with a syntax checker to filter down records when we are triggering our record trigger flows. This is not new. This came in the previous release. It may have been marked beta before. I'm not exactly sure, but I mean, this is GA right now, so it is available for you to use. And it comes with a nice dialog and configurator where you can actually look for variables that field names and the functions that are available to you to use, and also the operators, the ands and ors and equals. You don't have to memorize and remember all this stuff. You can actually select them from a pull down and then paste them in here. And once you click your check syntax, it's going to tell you whether your formula is correct or not. So let's stay with no filter conditions for now, and then click on done. Now, the first thing we observe here is on the left side, left panel, we used to have a toolbox, and that toolbox disappeared. So we have a bigger space, blank space, when we are in the auto layout mode, where we can, place elements, and then, we can comfortably lay out things. And we don't really have to worry about the toolbox unless we really want to look at it. Now we get this button over here, and that button is for us to toggle on and off the toolbox view. And the first time you open this, since I played with this before in preparation, you didn't see that, but the first time you open this, you get actually a bubble here that says, psst, your toolbox is under this button now. We just hid it for your convenience, but you can always click on it and then get it back. So that's the one change here. And another change here, but let me just create an element here and say like, okay, decision, for example, like let's create a decision here. And say, we are on opportunity, right? And let's say, is account null, meaning, does this opportunity record have an account assigned to it? And I can check that by going here and referring to the current record, current opportunity records account ID field value. We always have the field values for the record that triggered the flow available under the $record notation. And then we can check whether that is null or not. So that's how we would check whether there's an account. There's an account assigned to the opportunity or not. And then let me just rename this one to clarify. the condition here, the outcome, not null. So let's say I'm doing something like this, and I want to update the account that's related to the opportunity, let's say, right? So, and what I usually do is I check whether there's an account, and then under yes, null, I would update that account with an update element. Now, let's say I got confused and I created this one right here, right? That's not what I want to do, but I'm going to do it wrong by on purpose to show you the new functionality. So I'm going to say update account. If there is an account, I want to update account, and I'm going to use the opportunity record that triggered the flow, or I'm going to use the record related to the opportunity. So this is brand new. Now, what we used to do is, we didn't have this radio button before. What we used to do is we used to say, okay, well, I want to insert an update element. My update element, I'm going to point to the object type account, and my filter condition is going to be the ID equals the account ID on $record, and $record being the opportunity that triggered the flow, right? So now I have this here that allows me to pick any record that's related to the opportunity directly without doing all that. That's quite convenient. So now all the records that are related to the record that triggered the flow are made available to me. And I can say, I want to drill down in the $records and go to the account. Account ID, no account. Let's update the description maybe, right? Do we have an account description or account notes? So records related to the opportunity. I think here I'm going to point to the record first. So let me just do this account ID. Account. Account, yeah, under here. Let's say I want to update the notes, account notes. Now, when I select this one, this is actually a related record, by the way. So, account can have multiple notes records related to it. So I'm actually going from the opportunity record, I'm going to the account record, and under that account record, there could be multiple nodes. And I can update all of them in one shot. So it is warning me here. It's saying multiple nodes records can be related to the opportunity triggering record. If there are no filter conditions, all related records are going to be updated. So I can actually update them all in one shot. And I can say here, the title of the node is going to be updated in winter 23. So this is one way I can do this update here. Now, I wanted to put this update actually on this branch, not on this branch. So I made an error just on purpose to show you how I can move this. Now, what I used to do before is I would actually go back to freeform, because it was a little bit of a pain to reconnect things like this in auto layout. But now I can actually use the cut element and paste. So I'm going to cut this one and I'm going to paste this one here. So it's very simple. It wasn't like this before. It's much more practical. And you used to have the ability to copy and paste, but whenever you copied and paste, it actually renamed everything, and it was too complicated. We don't have that problem here. See, the element is called update account still. It is not called update account _00 whatever one. So it doesn't do that anymore. So that's quite practical. Now let's go back here. I made this one a little bit more complicated than it needs to be, it seems like. So I'm updating here the notes, and I wanted to actually update the account. I'm trying to go to the accounts here, and doesn't the account have a description field? Why do
Yeah, it looks like those aren't like other related records, is it? Like it almost looks orders and stuff. It almost looks like it's listing related records there.
Yeah, I think it only shows the related records here. So I think to update the account, so just to update the account, maybe I cannot use that. Records related to the opportunity record. Okay, so this is the account. That's dollar record.
If you just select account, does it like give you an option to select the field below it or something? No, that's the.
All right, so I think that's what we need to do. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Yes. Yeah, so yeah, this is new functionality. So it confuses me as well. In fact, in preparation, I was doing the same thing and I got confused the same way. So we'll see how that works out. So here, you need to point this one to the account ID. Usually in this dialog, you pick account ID, but maybe Salesforce made this a little bit confusing as well. Like usually you see a dollar record account ID, as far as I can remember, but this, when you drill into it, it just says dollar record account. It doesn't say account ID because it points to the record. I guess maybe it makes sense. So then you point to that account ID record, and then you update the description, and the update in description is going to be updated in winter 23, right? So that's how this one would go. And that's how cut and paste actually works as well. So let me just save this one. And before we get out, there's something else we are going to spend some time on, which is the test. So we have the low-code and no-code testing available now. It used to be in beta. It's no longer in beta. So, we are going to spend some time on that. This is where we open the test dialog here. View test, create test, that all happens there. And then I'm not exactly sure whether, I think this was available in the last release, but I can't remember. So here, you can also select multiple elements and then perform operations on multiple elements like copy elements. So this is your select multiple elements button here. All right, so let's go into this flow right here. Let me just make this view a little bit smaller. Yeah, in preparation for this session, I created this one, and let me see if there's anything else I need to show you here about the new functionality. So this is actually the same way, opportunity. This time it is triggering whenever opportunity is created in after save mode. And then we come to a decision again, does the account exist? And then we are updating the account. It is, you are going to, again, get like a warning saying, you know, you could be updating multiple accounts, but obviously one opportunity can only be related to one account. So you are updating here one account record. And this branch doesn't really do anything, it ends. Now, another new functionality, which is a very, very welcome functionality, is your scheduled path. You know, in your record triggered flows, we had also scheduled path functionality. So we could trigger things like email alerts a day after, and things like that. And, you know, we can actually use any kind of date and time field, and we can take that field as a reference, field value as a reference, and then we can schedule things before or after in reference to that field. But we did not have 1 month offset before, which was a huge pain in some situations, because especially when you're dealing with financial institutions, loan management institutions, whatever, they actually like things, obviously, to happen on the same day every month, right? So if somebody is past due, it's usually 1 month past due. They don't really want to do it in most cases in 30 days. And every month has, I mean, months can have different number of days in them, obviously, based on the calendar. And here now we had months after and months before, which means if you are triggering this opportunity flow this month on the 27th of August, and you're scheduling an email alert for the next month, it is going to occur on the 27th of September. And it doesn't matter whether between, you know, 27th of August and September, there are 30 days, 31 days, or 29 days. It's not going to matter. So that's also a welcome functionality. And then, you know, you can schedule your email, and through the use of the email action, you can just send out an email either to the customer, client, or internal email for somebody to follow up on things. Any questions on that? And we have a question here that says, how do we log in as different user in Flow to update the record to get the last modified by to be updated as that user? I do not understand the question. Can you please go off mute and tell me what the question is?
Yeah, I can explain. So currently when the flow is triggered, whoever the user modified the record will get stamped on the last modified by field. But we have a requirement like we want to update the record last modified by as a system administrator or some integration user instead of the regular user who triggered the flow. So anyway, we can we can use like login as this user and then do the update action on the flow.
Okay, okay, I get it. Let's come back to that. Yeah, sure. I have some ideas about that, but let's come back to that. Okay, of course. Now, so this is the 1 month later action. Let me just go through my release list. Launch Screenflows with Lightning Web Components. This is actually pretty cool. It's not going to be something we're going to be showing today, but you know, if you need a custom screen component, you can either use or reuse somebody else's. Sometimes we use stuff from Unofficial SF and whatever. Or, you know, your developer can create one for you. And those were not capable of running flows inside them. So now you can launch Screenflows with Lightning Web Components. Sometimes this is very useful. So the flexibility and interplay between the different components is going to give us many more possibilities when designing screens. And then we have the control flow screen visibility based on record field values.
Andy,
yeah.
Are you trying to show like a help page? Because we see your flow record triggered opportunity winner. There you go. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have two screens. I was looking at my second screen, but you weren't.
Sure.
Sorry.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah. So here we have control flow screen visibility based on record field values. Now, to be honest with you, I read this one. I did not 100% understand what it exactly says, but I remember there were some difficulties in some situations. The screen visibility of fields of input boxes actually did not function properly. There were some issues with that. It wouldn't hide that input box based on some of the other values on the screen or field values. I think I would call this one like a fix, I would say. So I think it looks like that one got fixed. So the visibility on the screen is working properly based on the record field values. And again, the multi-column flow layouts with section component, there have been some improvements that has been made on the screen layout, screen flow layout. And I'm going to show you that right here. Let me just go to the screen flow that I have created. Okay, again, when we open a screen flow, it's very similar to the record triggered flow. On the left side, we don't really have a toolbox showing unless we click on this. And here, oh, okay, this is not the flow that I was looking for. Just a second. Collection filter, we're not gonna get to that right now. Yeah, this one. So this is just to show you the functionality here on your screen. So previously, when we clicked on a screen or we created a new screen like this, this configurator was not as big. So it wasn't covering most of the screen. So this is one of the, let's say, usability advancements that Salesforce has done. So it gives us more space to work with. You know, it was very hard to configure multiple columns, and some things were being hidden, and then you had to scroll sometimes horizontally, sometimes vertically to see what you were doing. So now with this release, we have that functionality. And if you've played with screen flows, you know that there is a screen, there's actually a section component that you can use. So you can use that section component to create multiple columns and then put multiple elements in those columns. There has been improvements that was made in regards to how these work. And as far as I understand, again, I looked at the screen, I looked at the release notes. As far as I understand, these have been made responsive to show like on the mobile phone properly. I think that's one of the improvements here. It's this one right here. Because we did have actually the multi-column layout before. And there was a 2-column screen flow configuration, like kind of a legacy functionality that you could turn on somewhere. So they are completely moving away from that. So it's going to be ignored. If you were using that before, you are going to need to move away from that. And I mean, most of this stuff was available before, but I think they made improvements on the quality of how they function. And this is actually our fields, or with the new name, what is it called? The dynamic forms for flow. They call it dynamic forms for flow. As you know, there's also dynamic forms on the page layout side. So this one is called dynamic forms for flow. I don't think it's a very great name for it. It's a little bit confusing, but still it's there. So when you are putting text input component, you can actually carry them from the left side and then drag them and drop them down here. Or you can just use the field values from a record variable, and then you can drag them down here. When you do that, the properties of that field and some of the validations like length, they are going to be carried over to this input element automatically, so which is quite useful. And this is now generally available, I think, but it still doesn't support some of the field types. For example, it doesn't support currency. That's why when I'm creating a form here for opportunity, I couldn't drag and drop the amount here. I can use things like quantity, which is not a currency, a number, text, I can use pick lists and whatever, but I cannot really use amount. And then when you came to the screen and you wanted to create a record variable, if you have not done that before, you clicked on this new resource here. And that actually took you a new resource creation where you could create like a variable and all kinds of different ones. It wasn't defaulting to a record. Now it's defaulting to a record. So, it's a convenience improvement that Salesforce has done. So you'll just create your record variable here from this dialog so that you can pick it here. And then you can use the fields from that record variable to carry on to your form. Like, for example, lead source. Let me just put that here. And then that becomes an element on your screen. Yeah, this is how it looks like. I mean, it's really nice for pick lists and things like that, because you don't really have to worry about what pick list values are valid or available for your pick list. That carries over automatically. But the one difficulty we've had before this release is if you had multiple record types, as you know, in Salesforce, you can have different record types, and under those different record types, you could have different valid pick list choices. Record type A could have, 1 and 2 available from the list, and then record type B could have like all the 4 pick list choices available for the user to enter. And Salesforce flows were ignoring that. They didn't support that. So that one got fixed as well. Let me see, where is that in my list? Right here. So filter your pick list values based on record type is available here. And as far as I understand, when you are, let's actually try that, because I haven't tried that myself. Usually the way you would enter, the way you would add a pick list choice here would be like this. From here, if you do not use the fields functionality, you would just drag this one here, pick list, and then you would configure it here. Component type pick list. We don't want multi-select pick list, and then we can create choices here. And let's say we want to create a new record choice set. No, pick list choice set. And we are on the opportunity. So let's do a stage one, stage pick list choice set. Object opportunity. There you go. Data type pick list, field, stage name. Well, I don't really see a record type selection here, but I don't really have record types activated in my org either, so I can't really tell where I'm supposed to see that. Let me just see default values, set component visibility. No, I guess I need to try it on an object where I have record types activated. Maybe I'll see that. Well, that'll be something for us to hunt down and find the treasures for. All right, so let's go here now, down in our list. We've done the cut and paste flow elements. We've done the toolbox auto hide, formula builder in flow resources, and that's a huge one. All right, we got to talk about that. Okay, now our formula builder, this was a pretty big pain actually that everybody was expecting to be resolved, which got resolved now, which is great. So now let's say we go back to our opportunity record triggered flow here. And open this one. Now we've seen that together. Our record trigger start element, record triggered flow start element configurator got a condition requirement choice that says formula evaluates to true. And then under there, we had this like formula editor with a check syntax button. That was made available in the previous release. But whenever we wanted to create a formula resource, for example, that's going to determine what the email body is going to say, or if we wanted to, for example, construct a string here to update this record in the description, then we would create a formula resource here. And this formula resource did not have this editor available before. So, I mean, it had the editor available. You could pick stuff like this from the pull downs, but it didn't have the check syntax button, which was a huge pain. So you would actually enter things, and then you would create a formula, and you couldn't check the syntax. You would save your flow. Once you saved your flow will have a warning here, stop sign or something like that, a red sign that'll show, okay, your formula syntax is wrong. But that was very inconvenient. So let's call this one description text formula. Data type text. And let's insert a resource here. Let's grab the opportunity name and insert it here. And let's also grab the opportunity stage. And combine that with something like Okay. We need to tighten some of the things. So, what was I saying? Let me just see whether I can remove this.
Did you just make that red mark, Andy?
No, I don't think that was me.
Yeah, I see an unknown user. I don't know who that is. If that person can't represent themselves, you might want to think about kicking them out.
Yeah. Well, we'll kick them out if necessary. So
okay.
Yeah,
right.
Let's make the announcement here. They need to identify themselves, change their names. If they don't change their names to an identifiable name, they're going to get kicked out. So dollar record name, dollar record stage name, and then let's combine this with description, because this was supposed to be a description string. So let's say you wrote it this way, which has a bunch of errors in it, and then you saved it. You would go here, done. And then you would save, and it was going to show you here, look, your description text formula has a syntax error in it, right? So you don't have to wait that long anymore. Now you can actually hit the check syntax button, and then it is going to show you that there's a problem. Extra dollar record. By the way, the explanation is not that great, but anyway. So we did not include an end here. Let's include the end. Let's see what it's going to say. Let's fix step by step. So field dollar record is a pick list field. Pick list fields are not supported in certain functions. So without processing the pick list field, you cannot add it to a string, which means you got to convert it to a text, right? So let's do it. Check syntax. The formula expression is invalid. Field description does not exist. Check spelling. So it is saying if you are trying to insert a field name here, that's not a field name. It doesn't work. So what I want to do is I want to actually append static text at the end of it. So let me just fix that as well. And look, now we are valid. So this is very good. You know, this was not available before. In fact, there was a paid add-on that was trying to solve this problem. Now we have it available inside Flow functionality, which is great. All right, so what else do we have? Let me just see here. My release notes. Another thing is, you know, we have a pretty powerful, and I'm going to show you an example, a collection filter element. And the collection filter element supported formulas, but it didn't support the check syntax, I think. So that also came there. So that is the announcement here. And there's a new function that we can use, is clone, in record triggered formulas. I don't really use clone much, but so if you use standard Salesforce functionality to clone a record, then it knows that the record is cloned, and you can actually use in your record triggered flow formula whether that record is a clone record and make decision on what to do with that. You know, is clone, probably it doesn't take an operator, is clone, open parentheses, close parentheses, and it's going to evaluate to true if that record is cloned. And we saw the record triggered flows to update related records. Now that's available for us to use. And this is a big one, use in and not in operators in flows to find related records. And I'm going to come to that. This is a little bit complicated. And we talked about Lightning Web Components, control flow screen visibility based on record field values, get multi-column flow layouts, generate flow choice options from external data. This is great. This is not something that's going to make a huge difference in an average, let's say, flow developer's life. But if you wanted to feed choice elements from an external system using Apex code or something else that you could inject like a collection into the choices, you can do that now. Let's say you want the user to choose from like 4 different versions of package on a car, right? You know, they are picking a car, they want to rent a car, and then there is like a small, medium, large, extra large or something. And that needs to be fed from another system, you know, it changes. So that can be done now. Filter your pick list by record type. We talked about that. Create record resources with ease. And I showed you that one on the fields tab. If you want to create a new resource, it defaults to record. Specify time offsets in months. Get more canvas space. Enjoy more room when building flow screens. We saw that one. Find flow elements faster with search. Oh, this is a very basic one. We saw it, but I did not mention it. This is great. So when you want to add a new element here, you can actually search now. It used to be you had to scroll amongst all these elements. You can start typing and it's going to search. For example, I want to do an update, and then I can start typing update, and it's going to show me all the available choices: update triggering record, update records. And it also shows me actions that are named like that, the name contains the letters U and P. And it also shows me my activated auto launch flows that can be used as subflows, and the ones that have U and P in the name, which is great. That was not available before. So let's quickly go to our collection filter and show you the in functionality before we go to ask me anything or questions in answer space. Now, this is an interesting one. Previously, whenever there was a lot of SQL inquiries involved, and they had to be complicated, sophisticated, we kind of directed developers to Apex and code, because the SQL functionality under Apex is much more powerful than what you can do in flows. We don't really have everything, all the parameters that are available to code in flows. Now, one of the things that's not available is in code, you can actually search within a subset of records, let's say. Like, for example, you can say, I want to look for opportunities that have a close date between these dates, but I want to only look through a subset of opportunities, not the whole opportunity space, right? So you can narrow it down. So now we have some of that functionality available here. So to demonstrate that, I created a flow here that has a get cases element here. So what this is doing is it is getting cases that are associated with a certain account. This account ID is being passed to the flow. This could easily be associated with a button, for example. You are on the account record, you click on the button, and then this is going to get all the cases that are associated with that account. And then I'm assigning these cases to a collection record variable, and I'm deciding which one of the field values I'm interested in. So those field values are going to be carried over to the collection record variable. Now, not that I couldn't have done this right here in this first step, but I wanted to demonstrate and show the functionality. I'm going to use a collection filter to narrow down the collection and get a subset of that collection for only the closed cases. So if the status of the case is closed, it is going to be filtered down in this step right here. So this is my filter condition, and this is what the release note said. Now you can use a formula here as well with a check syntax button. So you don't really have to use this like a limited condition input form. You can just create a sophisticated formula here as well to narrow down your collection. And I want to go through that closed cases collection, loop through that closed cases collection. So I want to create an element here, like a loop element. I insert a loop element, and then I point it to the collection variable. Now, the collection variable collection record variable that I need to point to is cases from filter closed cases, which is the output collection, the filtered collection that comes out of this. It's automatically created. So the name is going to carry the filtered closed cases that I named this element. So once I loop through that, I can take the contact IDs of those cases and I can add them to a text collection variable. Now, it's important to note the in functionality does not work with record collections. It works with text collections of ID, for example. So what I'm doing is I'm taking all the contacts that are associated with all these closed cases on the account, and I'm going to keep them somewhere, right? So I'm adding those to a stack of record IDs collection variable, but it is a text type. It is not record collection variable. So I'm taking all these IDs, I'm accumulating them, and then I'm going to do an update on all those contacts. And I can here show you and demonstrate that I can do that by, whenever I do an update like this, I'm actually doing a circle statement. I'm querying the database. I'm deciding which records I want to work with. And I'm doing my update on all the records that filter that criteria. And here, now I can use the new operator called in. So I can say, you know, I want to update all the contacts where ID is in this collection of text variable that contains all the IDs. And that's the one I have created and populated. And I want to update the description with this contact needs to be surveyed. Let's say I want to survey all these contacts where the cases are closed, right? Recently, they have been closed. So if I go to debug this one, maybe this is going to be a bit more understandable if I go to debug. It's a little bit complicated. I want to point this to the United Oil and Gas Corporation and run this. What I'm going to see here on the right side is that the flow is going to get cases. Let me make this screen a little bit bigger. The flow is going to get the cases associated with the account. It says get cases where the account ID equals record ID this, right? So it doesn't show me what it got exactly, but it shows me that these are the fields that I'm saving in my collection record variable as I designed the flow to do. And here is my collection filter step. Here I get more information. It says, you know, well, in your get step, you got 9 cases. Now you are filtering these down to 7 cases. And these 7 cases are these cases. If you can see all these status values, they are all closed, right? And then I'm going to loop through these closed cases. These are the IDs of these closed cases, and add contact ID to the collection. So in the first step, I'm adding this contact ID to the collection. And in the second one, I add one more. So the collection variable keeps growing. And then eventually, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, obviously. And then I'm doing an update on all those right here. In a single step, I can update on all those. Now, some of these IDs, contact IDs, actually repeat themselves. So it is a little bit redundant that, you know, you kind of do an update on the same record. But I don't know whether we can actually filter this down to unique IDs without using any custom component action or code. I mean, for our purpose, it doesn't really harm us. So any questions so far before we go into the other questions here? Recording, yes, we'll publish the recording, of course. Daniel. So any questions? Okay, so then let me go back to the previous question where it said, okay, we want to run the flow in somebody other in somebody else's context. Let me just pull up a web page first of all. Jen Lee wrote a blog post about this one, which is quite useful. Let me just show you that one. And yeah, it is called Your Guide to Determining the Flow Running User and its Execution Content, right? So this actually explains us when we run our flow, what context is being used. And sometimes we can control that, sometimes we cannot control that. And you can see here, for example, that Screenflows running as current user and scheduled triggered flows run as the automated process user and all that kind of stuff. And then you have quite some detail around flow execution context. I think there is also another site that is under helpsalesforce.com that also shows here which context the flows run in. Let me just paste these to the chat. So the admin one I pasted already. The other one, let me just paste as well. So in summary, though, there are two different alternatives here. Either the flow runs in the user context, or they run in system context. And when they run in system context, that means they run at the default process user. default workflow user context. Usually we actually make this one the system admin. So there are no other alternatives that I'm aware of. So the question was whether we can run the flow from the context of another user, like, you know, for example, there's a user called Mike or Susan, the API user. Can we actually point to a user and say like, okay, this user should run this flow? No, I mean, you would have to have, well, if we were talking about a record triggered flow, for example, you would have to have that user to initiate whatever change that needs to happen in your org. And then that's going to trigger that record triggered flow from their context. Or with the orchestrator, what we can do is we can actually assign them an item, and that item can be run from that user, but in the end, the user has to initiate it. They have to log in and initiate it. I hope that answers your question. I mean, it doesn't solve it, but I hope that answers the question. Any other questions?
Andy, I apologize if you answered it, but there was another question from Dharmesh about using email alerts in Flow. Did you answer that one? I apologize if you did.
No, there's no apology needed. Email alerts. Let me just find it. That email has attachment, and we need to email to all our contacts more than 2,500. How asynchronously we can send email alerts using flows. Okay. Yeah. So the email alert functionality, if you want to email a large number of users, first of all, here is this, like, this is quite important. If you do not take the necessary steps for your email not to end up in spam, or, you know, not to get the dreaded warnings inside Gmail that says, you know, this email may not be from the originating user, or, you know, you may not be from the user that it says it is from, kind of thing. So if you don't take those steps, and if you email in bulk like that, it is not going to create the effect that you wanted to create. Like, for example, I sometimes work with clients where they say, okay, we want to do a simple dunning email and then remind the customers that they have not paid on time or something, but they want to do it from within Salesforce. But most of those emails are going to probably end up in spam unless you use like a good emailing solution, and it's not going to create the effect you want, right? So also with marketing. So if you are emailing such a big number, probably you may want to be looking at different solutions where you do a proper emailing from a domain, authenticated domain, and then you warm up your IP and DNS and whatever, right? So having said that, you can actually email large number of clients.
Yes, actually, like I'm using the Apex, and I run the query using this. Yeah, but I have to break down it to 10 contacts.
Yeah. So, okay, for that one.
That can be like, because I am only the administrator and developer, and they are quite, we are managing a one nonprofit, and they are quite dependent on me. So they want some solution to that, like, whether they can just change the contents, and I can set up some user interface and press the button, and then it will automatically handle the email process.
Okay, so for that one, I highly recommend you actually check out the Send Better email unofficial SF component. Have you checked that out?
Unofficial. Oh, I have
unofficial
not,
SF. Yeah, so this one allows you to do pretty much everything under the sun that's possible related to emails out of Flow. It's obviously a custom component, coded component, and I think probably it's open sourced and under GitHub. You can even customize it if you wanted to, but it has actually a bulk email functionality, which I have not used personally, but as far as I understand, it creates a list of emails and email addresses, and then it can release those without hitting limits.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
Yeah. So this should be a good remedy for your issues there. But I have not personally used it for this purpose. I use this component many times, this action many times.
Yeah.
Just
means like we can also manage the limits through using the flows. The main idea is to use the flow. We have the Apex classes that takes care of the sending the email, but I run the query, so many contexts, so I run the query so that I have to run that query in the batch.
Yeah.
So only the batch things can it handle or not? Means like.
Because, what was your last question?
Because it takes a lot of time. If I run the queries and if I run the 50 contexts, it hit the limits, I guess. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you can do is if you end up with, let's say, I don't know, 2,500 email addresses, I think you can actually use this action here, the send better email action, and say like, go ahead and send out a bulk email to these 2,500 email addresses. And I think this one, like for example, look, it says, it knows that, you know, there cannot be more than 10, and it is managing that. I don't know how it's doing. I don't know how it's doing. You gotta read through it, but I briefly read through it before, and as far as I understand, it just stores them in some kind of custom object or something like that. I don't know. It just releases them little by little so that you won't experience problems.
So yeah, I will check to that, and I also have the solution in the flow. Only thing is like I was worried about the asynchronous thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, asynchronous, you can call an action asynchronous, you know, that one is
asynchronous in the sorry, not asynchronous. Only thing is the batch. I have to just I was worried about the batch.
Yeah, check this one out. I think that you could come up with ideas here.
Sure.
And especially if you have command of Apex language anyway. Like I said, I know many people who actually take these actions and they modify them because the code, they are mostly open sourced, and they modify them for their own needs as well.
Yeah, I can write the Apex though, but I just want to avoid Apex actually.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the one last thing I was going to say about this one. Unofficial SF components are components that you can install and use for free, but because they don't come through the app exchange, technically they have not been through the security checks of Salesforce. So some organizations may not want you to use these components, but like I said, they are mostly open source and widely used in the Ohana. The other thing that you need to be aware of is because they are not through the app exchange, they are not going to get automatic updates. So you would have to go back and check whether there's a new version, whether some of the new releases cause some conflicts, and then, you know, you may need to address those. But, you know, like I said, we use these in many orgs today.
All right. Yeah, I will definitely check to that. And thanks for pointing out.
Of course. Now, any other questions?
I'm done actually. That's a very good solution. I will read about that.
Okay. So John is asking, when should we go over scheduled triggered flow versus scheduled Apex class? Can you speak to that, John, a little bit? How do you mean? I guess. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm personally not an expert on that, but I have received a question before where somebody said, I'm trying to trigger an Apex through the scheduled triggered flow action, and it's not producing the results I want. What I would say on that is, to me, it makes more sense if you have Apex, that you should schedule your Apex through your scheduled jobs, not through a flow. And if you can put things inside a scheduled triggered flow, like the standard flow elements, actions, and components, then you should do it through your scheduled triggered flow. That's all I can say about that. So, any other questions? All right, so let's close it out for today then. Thank you very much for coming, and go ahead and engage. Do not forget to engage and through the community to learn the new functionality, and try it out in your preview works yourselves as well. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate it. Have a good one.